Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to welcome all of you on behalf of CIO&Leader and Airtel to this event on next generation video collaboration with the changing paradigm. As many of you know, my name is Giridhar and I'm group editor with 9.9 Media, which is the publisher of CIO&Leader magazine. I'm very happy that all of you could join us this evening, despite it being a working day, everybody has to go to office tomorrow. So thank you very much for being here. And this evening we have all joined here to talk about using video technologies to improve and enhance collaboration and productivity. And so there is little doubt that money and communications are the twin engines of modern commerce. So without either, it's very hard to do any commerce today. And of course, organizations depend on a wide variety of communication technologies to help employees, customers, suppliers connect and collaborate with each other. And over decades, of course, these technologies have improved a lot. We started with maybe pigeon mail and letters and then telegram, telephone. So it's continuing to evolve. And the technologies have also improved a lot in reliability, functionality, effectiveness. And of course, costs have fallen a lot. Lots of people remember how expensive mobile phone calls used to be and how much they cost today. So the cost have definitely fallen. And people with grey hair like me also remember how much internet used to cost and how much it costs today. So I think we have come a long way since then. And of course, these, even though communication and collaboration technologies are now widely available and they are quite cost effective also, there is still the challenge of making communication, the message, effective and efficient. You can have the latest technologies, but that doesn't mean you will have effective communication. You can have communication, but whether it's effective or not is a different thing altogether. I think all of you know you can send, everybody who's the head of IT knows you send a message telling people don't click on emails which you don't know where they are. Everybody promptly click on the email. So having communication is good, effective communication is a different thing. And and the human mind is actually very good at interpreting written word and speech. We are very good. So we can take a letter, even though if the printing is not good, if the message is a bit jumbled, we can still make some sense out of it and understand it. Because the human brain is wonderful at trying to find these things. But communication becomes even more efficient and effective if it is combined with moving images. And which is why we all like personal interaction, right? That's why everybody likes to meet somebody else. And the reason for that is that we want to experience, interpret body language, the gestures, the expressions, and we place a lot of value in that. And that is one reason why video conferencing works so well. It allows you to not just communicate with the person, but actually see them and have some kind of interaction, better interaction by looking at the body language, looking at the person, looking at the expressions, and so the communication gets enhanced. And this is particularly important if you have different cultures, if you are working across geography with different languages. You may not know much Japanese, but it's probably you could communicate with somebody in Japan if you could actually see them and you could react to some of their gestures. So same as sign languages work if you don't know much. But the thing is, if video communication is so effective and efficient, why don't we use more of it? That's the question. Why don't we use lots of it if it's so wonderful? What are the challenges, the constraints in deploying this more widely across the organization? Why don't we have lots more of it? And not just within the organization, but also with customers, also with partners, also with vendors. Maybe we can't roll it out to everybody, but why not these critical interfaces for the organization with the outside world? Again, video communication and how will new trends like the mobile workforce, BYOD, legal and regulatory issues, how do these affect video communication? We all know with regular communication, if you write a letter on a company letterhead, then we know that you're legally binding the company to something. So you'll be very careful what you write. But what if you were to write an email? So today email has become in that state that what you write in an email has become legal and regulatory. Video communication, how to handle this one? You handle it, right? Anybody thought about this? transmit, you can also record. And then can it be used as evidence? Does it bind the company? I think all these things which are also emerging are going to impact the way we use and manage video, and that is particularly important for people like all of you who are the people actually going to put these technologies in, train everybody else within the organization to use it. And so before I invite Arnav Vasu of Airtel to give a quick overview of where the environment for video conferencing today, I thought we could have a big round of introductions. Everybody, if they could just give their name and which organization they work for. Thanks, Arnav.
My name is Kapil and I work for the Apollo Clinic.
Thank you.
Yeah, my name is Naresh Pasnik and I work for Scientist Pharma.
Hi everyone, my name is Ratnesh and I work for eVery Sir.
I'm Amit from Uflex.
My name is Devin, I work for Invaxi.
Suzuki Motorcycle.
I am Sudeep Jain, I am part of the Devin Gold.
I am Ashish. I head the operations for Organics in Airtel.
I am Sukesh, the CMO for Airtel Business.
I'm Sanjeev Jain from Jinder ITF.
I'm Mrs. Sharma from JK Tire Industries Limited.
I am Rajesh Advani from P2. I'm Bhaskar from FIS Global Solutions.
Hello, I'm Manoj and from the North. Please my fleet.
Thank you. So over to you, Arnav.
Thank you.
So you should introduce yourself as well.
I'm Arnav. About a month back, I used to be heading products, data products for Airtel. But I've kind of changed roles now. And I look after the business for NCR, Delhi NCR. So over a period of time, I'll get to interact with a lot of you on the field, on the ground. But here today, I'm standing in my previous avatar as products. And I'm going to be explaining to you in a very crisp and short manner as to how things have evolved and how we are taking things as far as video collaboration is concerned. So, we'll talk first about how it's been so far. The way it has been is that there has been rooms and there have been rooms. And there are people who sit in those rooms and then they try to talk over video. That's the traditional model. In addition to that, you've now started adding more rooms, and therefore, the central exchange that you had became bigger and bigger. Because you felt that you could save a lot of money, and it's more effective, as we was just saying, to do video conferencing and stuff like that. So multi-point video conferencing became important. And then, of course, you started adding more form factors. So from rooms, you also started going to devices. So you said, my CEO doesn't want to be running from one room to the other room, and therefore I would like to provide him a device in his office. Or I would like to provide video conferencing on the desktop for people. Or I would like to provide video conferencing on a tablet, like an iPad or a Samsung tablet and stuff like that. So different form factors came. So all this started adding complexity, but as though it was not enough, then came in software vendors who came and said, hey, listen, the hardware video conferencing people are not the end of the world. We can't do as good video conferencing as they can. And then they started bringing in their ware. And you had things like Microsoft, and you had things like IBM same time, and stuff like that. So all that made things even more complicated, because now, what do you do with this thing in between? This has become a monster for you. So that's where it was all this while. The next generation video and the way it's going to evolve is that you will have this growing at a much faster pace, not only within your organization but also with the organizations that you work with. So for example, Uflex, you have all the leading brands around the world who are your customers, right? And you're doing packaging and stuff like that for them. And all of them would now want to communicate with you over video. Now somebody is using Polycom, somebody is using Cisco, somebody is using XYZ. What do you do? How do you ensure that that big monster in the middle is able to give you all of that flexibility? So you need interoperability between platforms. You need everything to become borderless so that people can very seamlessly communicate. You need to be able to scale it up. So sometimes in certain companies, eValueServe for example, you might have a situation where you want to communicate with 2,000 people at one go, and you might have a situation where you want only just 10 people. Now, the 2,000 requirement may not be there all the time, but it might still be there thrice or 4 times a year. How do you scale it up and scale it down? You know? So something like that. And of course, last but not the least, how do you protect your existing investments that you've already made in your rooms and stuff? So, a complex situation like this arises, where you've got rooms, you've got different kinds of, OEMs, you've got, devices, you've got interoperability between platforms, between networks. Your customer is sitting on an AT&T network, you are sitting on an Airtel network. It's a complex situation. So this is where, this whole thing about business to business video is going. And this is where you will suddenly find that video is slowly starting to move the manner in which voice had moved. So you had a number, and you never thought whether the guy at the other end had a telephone which could talk to the telephone that you were having, right? You just made a call. So similarly, even in video, it's going to evolve in a manner where you would have an address, and you'll dial that address, and you'll be on video with the other guy. This is reality. This is what is happening around the world. And this is where I think we should stop for a moment and think that do we as infrastructure owners of our companies have the capability and the ability today to be able to provide our entire ecosystem, which is our employees, our customers, our suppliers, the kind of capability that video will require. To hasten this process of this collaboration, there was something called OVCC which was formed approximately. Airtel was the only founder member from India. All the other guys were international guys like AT&T, BT, Orange, and OEMs like Cisco, Polycom, Microsoft, etc. What OVCC set out to do was what they written here. Any network, any vendor, any device. When they say any vendor, it is essentially the OEM. So it is Cisco, Polycom, Microsoft, IBM. Anybody should be able to talk to anybody. Anybody sitting on an AT&T network should be able to seamlessly dial a call to a guy sitting on, an Airtel network, for example, or a KDD network in Japan or whatever. And all devices should be able to talk to each other. So a tablet should be able to talk to a room, should be able to talk to a desktop, should be able to talk to a phone, whatever. So this is where OVCC was mandated to do. This is what OVCC was mandated to do. And they started setting up policies, they started setting up work groups, technology forums, and started creating a lot of platforms and principles and policies which will not only enable the technical interoperability, but also the commercial interoperability. So for example, if a customer who is sitting on an AT&T network has to talk to a customer who is sitting on an Airtel network, then he should be paying AT&T by the minute of usage of video that he does, just like a phone call. And similarly, the customer sitting on Airtel network should be able to pay by the minute to Airtel for the video. Now, between AT&T and Airtel, they should have an ability to transact and share those revenues for the purpose of exchanging traffic, just like the new invoice. So that's what OVCC does. So Airtel has been has been present in two ways in OVCC. One, there are only 4 core network service providers in OVCC globally, who are basically the exchange. Anybody else who wants to talk to anybody else in the world has to go through these 4 core providers in order to exchange their traffic. So Airtel is a core NSP along with Masergy, Orange and AT&T. Similarly, there are managed service providers, people who are providing services to the end customer. Airtel is also a managed service provider who is going to be providing customers the services, just like all the other guys here you see, SOG, Verizon, BT, Global, TCS, Singtel, etc. And then there are these OEMs who are in the board and who are sitting and developing the interoperability policies of how to ensure, because between the four of them, they kind of command almost 80% of the world's video enablement. And they are sitting on the board of OBCC to enable these interoperability policies. So this is what OBCC has been doing. A lot of work has happened, and I'm sure during the course of the discussion we'll get to hear from you as to how you are using video as well. And I would at this point in time hand back to Giri, because this is something that I wanted to share with you as a start point for this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Sagar. I think that was a very nice overview of where video conferencing technology is today and where it came from. I think some people can definitely relate to some of the pictures that you were showing. My concept of video conferencing was one big room in which you said it, look it up on the screen. So I just want to ask people around the table, how many people are using video conferencing? Not personally, as an organization. Okay, what's happening? What happened? So, can get Skype and FaceTime not included? Real stuff. Okay, well, that's good. So that's good. About half the people are using some form of video conferencing. So let me ask the half the people who are not using. Why are you not using? So those who didn't raise their hands are now stuck. First time, right? Usually you raise your hand and you ask the question. So this is the first time, it's the other way. So now, some may have, of course, no need. I mean, if anyone said no need, it's fine. People are not seeing it.
I saw everybody raising hand.
So everybody's raising, everybody's agreeing to do video conferencing.
What's the question? Who are not using video? Maybe that is more visible than the
So I thought of doing that, but then I thought, let me try this way and then catch all the people unawares.
See, but I think everyone did realize it.
Okay.
I don't think you should have done that.
Yeah. So since everybody says that they're using video conferencing, so I mean, just ask, so what purposes are your video conferencing used for? What are the typical things you use the video conferencing sessions for?
Video interaction.
Meetings across multiple locations.
Okay.
Right? Different topics.
Round meetings and all that.
But within the organization.
It could be within
So it could be within the organization, you say the customer.
Interviews, okay.
Yeah.
That's
trainings as well. Vendors.
trainings, okay.
Within our organization, we are using video conferencing very extensively. Daily meetings. But these are what senior meetings or even at the middle level also. Middle level.
Okay.
In our case, like we work 50 branches, we always connect with them, talk to them.
Every day, right? Keeping tabs on what they're doing.
That's right. And another perspective is managing 50 branches from one location, traveling cost is so high. So brought down the traveling cost like we are managing.
Okay.
So that's the main purpose.
So a lot of people are using it for efficiency, general coordination, making sure that everybody says the interviews was another thing that came up. So these are interviews within the company or you are interviewing candidates in both? Okay. So that's it. That's interesting. A lot of people are using. So anybody has some very innovative use for which you are using this video, which you think is very different?
Yeah, for us as a pharmaceutical, so what happened happens is we deploy this video conferencing. The artwork, which we developed at our headquarters, so that we are sharing with the plant and the operations, Russian operations, so that we correlate and then people do all these things. We are sharing through video,
Okay.
and then we getting the approval instantly. We save a lot of time in that.
So that's good. I mean, that's really a business activity. But that is what I was asking, going to ask the next thing was, how do you think it adds value to your business? So I think Kapil did mention that there is a cost saving traveling. But did other people have any other business value you see from video conferencing?
See, I beg to differ from Kapil. We don't cut down travel costs. Actually, we cut down the need of travel.
Okay.
Need for travel. So, I mean, you don't have to cut down travel costs, right?
Actually, the most important thing is not the travel cost, the time factor is also very important.
So time, so the speed of business, so you are able to do business faster, so that's
And
another
see,
benefit.
decision can be taken at a time.
Anybody else had any, I mean, suppose you mentioned, this thing about having global offices and need to change artworks and things, the speed.
In art is also, I mean, we are doing so in art is, I mean, whatever shepherd share, even for those shepherds, I mean, I think that we want
Okay.
actually saving a lot of COVID which is being used to lakhs and lakhs of
So that's very good point.
Organization from BMW, we are heavily using basically a method of playing one-to-one meeting is very
Okay, person to
So
person.
we are having a video, one-to-one meeting, you have a personal relation.
Right.
Another thing which we have noticed is that the participation increases because in case of the physical travel, the number of people who are participating in the meeting are less as compared to number of people who are participating in the meeting when it is being done on the video conference.
So everybody feels more involved in the company's operations.
Very valid point.
more meetings are also now started happening.
Yeah, because senior management can always justify this. I think the challenge is often that other people will
One of the other point is that most of the meetings, when one person is coming away from the meeting, most of the time he always say that okay, I'll get back with the details after talking to my
team. Yeah.
Now once he is here in video conferencing things, like we do a lot of international vessel trading business. So always there was a thing that okay, there's some insurance issue, okay, I get back after talking to my insurance team that okay, what has happened to the things. So now once we are in the video conferencing thing, people are not able to say that. So we said, okay, why did we call in and now let's resolve that particular issue that moment itself.
Okay,
so those things are really
so it facilitates the way you are doing your business and it becomes a lot more efficient.
We are also using VC for the training purpose.
Yes, you mentioned it, yeah, the training.
No, because on the sector
Right.
training is something which we are connected as sports staff.
Okay.
So we call them to guys that work somewhere, they come to us and we see can be done.
Okay, so that's actually a good point that running training. I think a lot of people who are in manufacturing, the plants,
Even we also run that.
we also run trainings. So training is another common and you're doing it very regularly.
You can do the recording
And take back.
for your
So when you do this kind of trainings or even the collaboration with on those diagrams and designs and stuff, do you talk, is video being used more for talking to each other face to face, or are you also sharing content? Both way. Sharing the content as well as presentations.
Like you see presentation and other way you have people. Yes. Simultaneous.
Various kind of things you can tell.
Nowadays, I think content sharing is very important. Because whenever we see we have content sharing.
Just to understand, any of you have gone through challenges in increasing the adoption of this technology? You faced a period of time where you invested but people are not using it. Anything which you have done differently to kind of increase the adoption of this technology? But that's something we obviously hear a lot, especially the customers who are going into this technology for the first time. So maybe some experience in that.
You see, I think
I think the more as a challenge, then we are not able to invest heavily on this technology.
Sure, please.
Right? Rather, we have a need, but we can make it a pressing need only if the costs are below than what it is today. Today, if I have to look at the flexibility isn't there. I tell you why the flexibility isn't there. The video conferencing is quite effective if I have Wi-Fi to this phone device.
Yes.
So if I run 3G, I cannot rely on the network today. Unfortunately, I'm on. I don't know. Unfortunately for you, I'm on an internet. So
Different department.
Very much the same.
So I also work for Airtel very briefly, so I understand. So the network, even for calls, it's not good enough in some places. So probably the network has to be augmented to the level that if I go and do video conferencing maybe in Japan or in China or anywhere else, the video streaming can happen live, based on network connection, but or in the US, so to say. But here the network is, kind of, I would say it's not pathetic, but it's kind of disgusting at times. The calls get dropped. Costs, I go and talk to people on doing a, pay per use model. I don't have any video conferencing bridge. I don't want to own one. But if I have to look at owning one, maybe I would spend about $40,000 to $50,000. If I have to go and do it outside, how much will it cost? So basically, then they say then there will be a network which will cost you, connecting you and the service provider, that will cost you, plus the per minute charges are like exorbitant. If you go and talk to, I've been talking to certain service providers, so not yet spoken to it, we will talk. If I go and talk about per minute charges, quite exorbitant. 1 hour discussion per person costs me a lot of money. I cannot. And there is no, if I go and tell my management, no, we need to do this, there is a need, so these are the needs, that is fine. Are there any pressing needs? Because they look at the cost and say, are there any pressing needs? I say no. Right? So that is where it starts. Otherwise, we can make it quite popular. Like the way we started with the calling, the mobile call, the calling rate, you spoke about it, right? So the calling rate was so high and the usage or ARPU was much lesser. The reach was much lesser. Now even you've got the reach quite higher, right?
Sure.
Everyone is able to afford the calls. Similarly, you need to make video conferencing services affordable so that people can talk on video rather than on calls.
So in today's world, affording video conferencing is not an issue. I think the biggest issue in the organization corporate is the space management. The problem is generally you see the corporates they have one room for the video conferencing dedicated or maximum 2, depending on the space. And both the rooms generally overbooked. So you have to always defer your conferences, meetings, and sometimes it takes months because if some delegates are there for a week and so you have to suffer for that. So that kind of issues I'm generally facing it right now.
No, typically it can be overcome with the flexibility. When you provide a flexibility that I can do,
you have a limited
space. I don't have to move out of my room.
Once you get into the desktop sitting where you are and you are able to communicate, I think in my mind, one of the biggest things is, as you rightly said, the rooms are not available. And if the rooms are not available, I don't even try and attempt at times because I know the rooms will not be available. So even if they don't have that mental cycle, the rooms will not be available. And hence, if I can actually do it in a way that sitting in my room itself or on my desk itself, if I can communicate through that. I think one more thing is that we as Indians probably don't have the discipline of time. Video conferencing means if it's 6 o'clock, then 6 o'clock, you be there, I am there. Not like.
Generally, 6 o'clock is the general time. So
someone is waiting and the other one is waiting. By that time, probably the next video session is booked already. So I think these are probably discipline issues, and I agree.
Like today, I came in early and I was waiting for you all.
So, just to respond to the earlier point you mentioned, obviously we haven't sat and discussed with you, but Airtel does have a solution very much similar to what you probably have in mind in terms of pay-per-use model and video conferencing, both bridges and networks, and of course the CPs and the endpoints obviously don't come in pay-per-use, but everything else is that. So we should discuss about that, and I'm sure we have a solution there. And as far as rooms are concerned, I agree with Sukesh. My own personal experience discussing with a whole lot of customers who are actually using these technologies, that desktop probably works far better than in today's environment than actually a room kind of environment. booking a VC, walking into a room, especially senior folks anyway don't want to leave their own cabin and walk into a room and so on. There are protocol issues, there are booking issues, there are availability issues. So desktop we have found works far better, and it's very easy to proliferate. I mean, everyone has laptops, everyone has webcams, so it's
Like all laptops now come with a camera, which has a default.
No, the problem is not that. So I know that you also have a service, but the question which I have is, can you make it affordable for me? Is
Yeah,
the question.
The question that I had, sorry,
Sure.
is that if, you said my management looks at it and says, is there a pressing need? Now, if you didn't do this, what would you do? I mean, you would still have to do a discussion. You would still have to have an interaction.
Yeah.
That interaction, if it has to happen face to face.
So the interaction even today, the point is even today it's happening. Whether or not, the interaction is happening.
So are you saying that the cost of interacting face to face
Yeah.
is almost the same as the cost of interacting over video?
That's the perception. So probably if you have to create that need, it is more effective. Everyone understands that. But then I'm happy with, it's not something which is going to give me more business. Right?
So it's not enough to compel somebody to make a switch in behavior, is what he's saying. So you are comfortable with traveling, so you don't see it compelling enough to
I
make a
don't
switch.
travel too much, but
Yeah.
I'm okay. Whatever.
No, but just in continuation of that question, is it that you actually have that conversation face to face thereafter, or actually you move on to an alternate way, which could be, let's say, an audio call, instead of having a face to face call? So it may not be as effective.
See, people today, if I talk about meeting in my organization, people are quite comfortable using an audio bridge.
Yeah, I think that's a
Okay,
very
That's
ours is a US based
it's-
organization.
It's probably audio
Yeah,
will be
AT&T
substituted
given,
that basis.
with a Mac, AT&T is given huge number of bridges for us. Take it and use it types. So everyone in my organization who's got a need for setting up calls or meetings has got one bridge. It's not a big deal. They go into the intranet, sign up, it says you will be charged, your bill will be charged $50. That's fine. Get a bridge. Done. Right? So the problem is, if I go, the time I go and talk to the vendors about video conferencing, if I have to shell out about 9,000 rupees per person an hour, okay, it's not worth. Getting the point where I'm coming from?
No, we understand that. So we should do some arithmetic with you and come around to what number it works also. But my own personal experience that if you really look at it as a complete managed service, then it's not very expensive. Two, it also depends on usage. So while it's managed per pay-per-use model, there is always some amount of fixed cost which gets associated with your own network. Okay, for example, the access cost, whatever cost goes in the access connecting to your premise is fixed to you. So if you have a substantial usage, then all of that can work out to a very economical amount. If your usage is not so high and you want to still have it for a sporadic usage, then it may not be the most
Boss, I always think the other way. There is a dialogue, if everyone understands, in the movie Surfers. एक बार बंदूक पकड़ाई तो गोली तो लगने ही लगी गोली के बिना बंदूक नहीं। So I tell you what, the problem with most of the service providers and the organizations is, I keep telling people, you create a need within the organization, you give something to them to start with.
Sure.
Then obviously no one would care what, once they start using, no one would care about it. Today, I just give you an example. Even when we started with the bridges, we just took one or two bridges, like an Airtel bridge. We have a large number of Airtel bridges today. When we started, I just took, I didn't want to go and change the entire organization, right? I didn't look at a sea change. I said, let's take a couple of bridges. Give it to people who do regular conferencing calls.
Sure.
So they found it so good because, for everything, they used to rely upon AT&T bridges, and there are 10 people, all from India who log on to AT&T bridge, dialing US number. I said, madness, get on to this. Then they saw the cost reduced, okay, pretty good. So then they compared with something they used to pay high, now they are paying low, right? So I get into that, I get into the trigger. So anybody coming and selling anything, that's what I tell them. You don't sell, you just give me, just put in a habit, put in a practice. A process, put in a process, you know, right? A process becomes practice, practice becomes habit, right? Then you cultivate the habit, you know, it becomes it's habitual for anybody. Okay, I have a meeting, let me log in from my desk into a meeting. Let me set up a video conference.
So I think, so while we were discussing all this, I think there was this question about, Sukesh made the point that, it's more comfortable to do from a desktop. So I just wanted to ask people around the room, what kind of video conferencing terminals or endpoints are you using currently in your system? Is it video conferencing rooms, or is it desktops, or is it IT phones? What are you?
No, I just wanted to make from what you were saying earlier. I think the video conferencing that we use currently, although I think it helps in a face-to-face interaction, but the quality of that medium is not that good that it completely eliminates, a face-to-face interaction.
A physical interaction.
On the other hand, if you look at the video conferencing, that substitute in forms of, audio conferencing is always available. So the medium is available, but, for any serious or, a very serious interaction, because still, if we have to really invest in the infrastructure in a way where we can easily see the visuals on the other side, I don't think it's still there.
Okay, so you're saying that
so it is lying somewhere in the middle. So I think everybody feels there may be value in it. But there is never a strong business case either from the quality side or from the cost effectiveness sides that comes on. I mean, we have been contemplating it, we have been investing a lot. We recently did a large investment in the Microsoft collaboration, but I think there's a lot of apprehension within the system that how exactly, would it be able to, we'll be able to do more face-to-face interaction doing that. The overall cost to make that quality as superior that, face-to-face interaction would go away. Or, the telephones would still be better. So I think that kind of a, predicament or, whatever you want to call it, it always stands there.
So, point here, go with a $60,000-$70,000 bill of material, say that I need a Polycom bridge, I need a Cisco bridge, you go with that and present it to your organization, you won't find an hour. The best way to do it is to go right on people who already have, get in as in small numbers. When MPLS got into India, initially 2-3 years, no one was picking it up. Then I called up Airtel. I said the first ever MPLS I had was with, through Airtel. I called Airtel. I told them very clearly, boss, your pricing is too high. Come and work out something. Give me some, in segments at least, so that it creates a need. People see the performance improvement. So that's how we need to go. We need to take baby steps. Maybe some $2,000 doesn't matter. Monthly $2,000 doesn't matter.
Maybe. So if you look at Cisco telepresence, I've seen this. I've seen organizations using it. In a more developed way. And it is great, but it is just too expensive. So the adoption of it never really came, at least on this side of the world.
Luxury.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just great. The interactions just took away whatever travel one may need.
It's a DC design.
It's an IUI contact that you can have on Cisco telepresence.
Right. So, just on this point I'd like to share, because I have been on the board of OCC for a while. There's something which is very interesting which has been worked upon between all these OEMs now. And they're talking about as desktop telepresence. Okay. What they're essentially saying is that the same quality that we get on telepresence, we will bring it to the desktop, which means it's super high definition. But at the same time, what is interesting is that they are working on the compression techniques to ensure that your bandwidth requirement is not that clear.
But how does it affect the internal network? That's the question that all the
So that is an interesting question, very good question. I answered it before that. The problem is today, I'm on this side of the table, right? So let me tell you open up front what my pain points are. You keep on improving technology. I don't want that. At least make the technology work within an organization first, right? that improvement, improvising technology, that is fine. You know, you get into a better technology, try to reduce bandwidth, all those things are fine, but you know, talking about telepresence on the desktop, forget it. Kalzi's camera, 3,000-4,000 rupees camera, desktop, show me it works, right? And it doesn't harm my bandwidth, you know, whenever I require, right? What, Mr. Kapil? Not interested? Alright.
No, he's given up already. He's got his he's got half of it.
No, I mean,
Sir, you are using
voice opinion.
video conferencing a lot in April, right? So, what has been your experience with this?
It's typically in rooms only. Not
Typically in rooms.
Yeah.
So, is there, but have you looked at desktops or have you looked
Not
at
yet. Not yet.
Okay. So, anybody else who's looked at doing or are already using desktops to do some kind of video conferencing? You are using on desktops. But you also have a room.
Yeah, so two.
Two rooms and desktop. Anybody else in this side?
We are also having, everybody is using desktop.
Desktop. Okay. So, is anybody using on the mobile? I mean, have you equipped the, let's say, the Salesforce or executives who are on travel, you know, to be able to do video conferencing via mobile or tablet?
And we have
You are already, yes. So you can do, everybody's doing on FaceTime, is it? Or they are using Skype? Unofficially.
You mentioned that you have implemented Microsoft.
We just
Link that you have implemented?
Yeah, so Link is a part of that module that we have taken. It's not completely implemented. But as I said, I think everybody is having apprehensions that how much adoption would actually come. You know, there may be adoption with some tech-savvy people who really want to keep it that way. But typically, you know, a good phone call would really work for a lot of people. So for them to move away from that and use that technology is something that, you know.
So, but do you think the challenge is in the training, or do you think that the workforce itself may not want
It's
it?
the culture maybe, or the habit, you know, what people, you know, having a phone number, reaching out on that phone number, I think that is just far too convenient.
You know, wait for 5 years and then nobody will be using phones. They all be on Facebook and
Ease of using the mobile and
So exactly, so I think it will be very aspirational at this stage at least to think that video conferencing will substitute everything, will substitute calls, will substitute travel, etc. No, I think it's the whole thing that we need to see is how does it supplement that. It cannot substitute, at least in today's age. Today the way we are actually given, I think we like to sit face to face. I was incidentally in Mumbai about a couple of weeks back, and I was having breakfast in the morning. So I saw this, and I'll call him Gorak, but I don't know if it was from US or Australia or wherever, but it was a foreigner sitting there having breakfast. And he just switched on his iPad, got into Skype with his wife, and while having breakfast, and this was about a 15-20 minute period he was having his breakfast, he also on his screen had some financial business. He was just sitting next to me, and I got interested in what he's doing. And he had some financial, I could see from big business, some financial things that were coming on. And while he's giving his directions to his wife and saying that, okay, maybe do this and do that and this. So he had his big headphones on. And I mean, he was having his breakfast packed up while walking again. He kept his iPad in front of him and just moved off. He could also have done the call. I mean, nowadays, how many of us actually want to speak on a speaker phone rather than even holding the phone here? Because we find it so very convenient. I mean, it's on the desk. You on the speaker phone. The phones are so advanced enough that the speaker is good, and you are able to do a conversation. So I think everybody is getting into a convenience mode. Even they don't want to hold the phone here and talk, so they want to be on the speaker phone. So I think the way things are evolving. That guy is having his breakfast and doing a video conferencing with his wife and giving whatever directions there. I mean, this may be more of a personal use because he just maybe needed to have a social connect with his family. But I think going forward, my sense is that how much can we start enhancing the usage? I think that would probably be the objective of most of the organizations in terms of how can you enhance adoption. I personally don't feel, as you said, it cannot substitute, but how much can it supplement really? And there can be plenty of use cases that can be brought up for even some sporadic usage.
Just to add, I think, sorry, if I interrupt, but I think the experience also has to kind of enhance from where it is. A little bit. And
I agree.
May not get too much of an investment. But I think people are willing to invest, but I think the experience has to go a little bit from where it is. That would, I think, make them come back to it again and again.
I think the need in the organization for the desktop video is there. The only thing is it is to be translated into the reality. And how it is to be translated into reality, that is the question mark. Because even today, what we have been noticing is that the marketing people who are sitting in the region, marketing people who are sitting in the area of it, they are also saying that we should also have video conferencing facility. And it is not possible that everywhere polycom equipment can be bought. So the only way we are left with us is that we provide them the desktop video conferencing. We are now deliberating, pondering upon that how to translate this requirement into the.
So, but what do you see as the hurdle in your organization? What have you seen? I mean, so you have said, that you felt there is a need and people have also been asking for this. So, in your organization viewpoint, what is the real hurdle?
The hurdle is that, especially in the marketing, the usage, as far as the plant review and the HR review and the engineering review are concerned, they are very frequent.
Okay.
And the return on investment is visible. But if we talk about the marketing, they have monthly review meeting only, and they will be using once in a month or maximum fortnight.
Okay.
So that is the thing that.
But doesn't the marketing head think he wants a meeting every day with them?
That I think the changes will come.
Okay.
We also foresee that today we are seeing that this is how the business is running, but tomorrow it will change.
Mr. Sharma, actually, it doesn't make a difference even if the use is as sporadic as once a month or twice a month, because then your costs are relative to that only. And especially when you're looking at a desktop kind of a PC equipment, it's not really any investment. In fact, desktop, and today if you want to look at an iPad kind of a solution as well, or a tablet kind of a solution as well, I agree, earlier I mentioned that 3G may not be the best of experience. It will not be for some time in the country as the networks are expanding. But in a Wi-Fi kind of a zone or on a desk, this thing.
Within the office.
It's within the office. It can be a very good experience. And it's basically and just to give you an example on the kind of service that we give, it's basically a client that you need to load on your tablet, and you don't need to do any other infrastructure expense on it, and you just pay for the 1 or 2 meetings that you hold. So I don't think there should be any concern on an ROI point of view from even that sporadic usage.
Actually, the only problem becomes that people who have already invested into your video conferencing tools and organizations, the interoperability, what Vasu was talking about, is a need basically for the things. Like your software-based video conferencing systems are not able to talk to the Polycom instruments which are available with us. The software doesn't talk to the same equipment until and unless you go to the same supplier for the software-based video conferencing.
Oh, no.
That's
So
not the problem at all.
So we can possibly do a discussion separately on this, but now everything talks to everything.
So that is through your bridge.
Through our bridge, correct.
That's what I'm saying. So until unless I have to switch from my bridge to your bridge, I will not be able to do that.
So what therefore a lot of people are doing is that the existing infrastructure that you already have invested in so many years back, it continues to remain, right? You don't know that. So therefore use it for your rooms, for your interoperability, for your room video conferencing, but for your other ecosystem, which could be your users or running on desktops or tablets or running your customer systems, you go into a service provider model and then make the service provider bridge talk to your bridge. Then what happens is, even the guys within your office who are wanting to talk to the rooms, so sitting at the desktop but he wants to talk to the Polycom room, that can happen.
And your investment stays, and you don't spend for those rooms which are already connected through your investment.
We tried with you guys only, but I think nobody was able to give us a solution. I think we can have a discussion.
Possible.
This is very much possible. The other interesting thing which is also possible is that Microsoft Bing, for example, you can